Perfect. All right. Well, good morning to everyone, and well, good evening to everyone. Good morning to me. Sorry, it's still pretty early here. If I yawn in the middle of this, I apologize in advance. Thank you for joining the webinar from What's Your Chase. Today, I'm going to speak about how you can join the top master's programs in the US. This talk is more oriented towards how you can get into the top schools. I won't be going into too much details about how you exactly make that application, but I will be trying to cover all the topics that will help you to get into all these top programs for masters. Um, it's more about finding out how you can make your application stand out. Feel free to send any questions through chat while I speak. I will be addressing them at the end of the presentation. So the way this will work is like I will speak for the first half, tell you about all the details, and you guys can send me questions during this time, and I will address them at the end. You don't have to wait till the end to ask all the questions. Okay. So let's get started. Before we jump into that, I would like to just tell you guys a little bit about me, just so you guys know who's the host and why is he telling us about all these master's things, right? So I'm from Nagpur. I moved to Mumbai to study computer science at Sardar Patel Institute of Tech. I realized soon after I started my bachelor's that I have two routes after I finish my bachelor's. Either I can do a job in India, or I can get like master's in US. I wasn't definitely like the topper of the class or the smartest person in my class, but I knew that I wanted to kind of like go out there and check out the world. So that's why I wanted to. I decided pretty early that I wanted to do like a master's. So, I applied to a few colleges, and luckily I got accepted into Carnegie Mellon University's information security program. Uh, Carnegie Mellon, if you don't know, is like one of the top schools for masters for computer science here. So that was pretty amazing for me. So I studied information security there, and after that, after I graduated, I moved to the Bay Area, as we call here, or Silicon Valley, as the world knows. That's why the GIF or the image there. I don't know if you guys have seen the show, but if you haven't, you should, or maybe you should wait till you come here because it makes more sense then. I've been working as a security engineer for about 4 years now, or a little over, I think. And my latest job is as a security engineer at Checker, which is a background check company. A security engineer basically takes care of all the data that a company uses, make sure that it's all secure, that the websites you log into are secure, and the way we handle the data is all secure. So it's not as cool as the image over there, but you can think about that. All right. And lastly, that's my picture on a cruise in Vietnam. Cool. So let's get started. So these are basically the requirements to get into all the top schools, or basically kind of the requirement for just applying for a master's position, master's program. I'm gonna go through each of these in depth. Once again, I'm not gonna go into weeds of how to submit an application, but I'm just gonna try and explain what you can do to make each of these kind of better, right? Also, I'm not gonna talk about the last point, the work experience, because I think the application pretty much stays the same if you have some work experience, like like after your bachelor's, if you do like 2 years of job and then you apply for a master's, it's gonna stay kind of the same. You just, I think you mentioned a little bit more about work, because work becomes like your first thing in the statement of purpose. So we'll go over that a little bit, but I'm not gonna jump too much into the work experience. You guys can feel free to ask me questions about that though. All right. So the first thing on this is the GRE, of course, the exam. As you guys might know, the GRE is scored on a total of 340, half of which is math and half of which is English. So I think like a good score is anywhere between 350 and 320, or anything more. Obviously, the more you get is definitely the better. So the way it is scored is that out of 340, 170 you get for math or max, and 170 for English. And actually, you already get 130 in each of these as a default. So kind of what they're scoring you is only on those 40 points, right? As an engineer or anyone coming from a science background or an engineering background, I think getting the math part right and scoring a total of 170 on that is pretty achievable. Pretty achievable, believe me. So what you do need to do is like just practice on your English and get at least 20 points on there, and that will already give you a score of 320. Does that make sense? Um, so I think uh, I think in my opinion, like math, English takes most of your time to prepare for the GRE, right? Um, the ideal time to give GRE is around the seventh semester if you are studying currently, or if you are working, then I think if you want to join in the fall semester, which means a fall semester starts around August. So if you want to join then I think you should give like GRE maybe a year before, or if you're working, I can understand, then you can probably do it a little later too. Why August and September? Because you, if you have to give the GRE again for some reason, maybe your score is not good enough, or you think you can do better next time, or even if you get a good score, then I think this gives you ample amount of time to uh, give TOEFL after that, and then prepare your application for the next like 2 or 3 months, so that you can start applying readily by December and January. That's when you apply for most schools, December, January, and February. So my pointers for GRE or getting a good score is focusing on vocabulary. You have to start early and keep revising, right? When you say vocabulary, when I say vocabulary, I think you guys are aware that it takes like about 2,000 to 3,000 new words that you have to learn to kind of do well in GRE. It's not your average English test, right? So it takes a lot of time to learn these new words. And my way to go about it is to learn it for life, not just like to learn it for a test. What that means is like, don't think of it as just, that, oh, I have to learn this word because, I won't do better on the test otherwise. Try to think of it as, I think try to think of it as like, this is going to improve your English anyway, and then that will help you in your life, in your career, in your job, right? So try to think of it that way. And for me, it's personally exciting to learn new words, to find like hidden words that I never knew about. So it takes a long time to learn these words, and it takes a lot of revision. So for me, like I started studying quite a few months before I gave the GRE in like August. So I mostly practiced just like learning words, like 50 new words every day or so, and then kept revising them. There's a lot of techniques you can use. There's a lot of flashcards you can use. There's a lot of applications today on your phones that you can use that are actually pretty smart and will, put the cards that you don't know more often, or you keep forgetting more often. That way you will remember them. So that's kind of the main thing. And then you can also focus on math a little bit, solve a couple of books. Yeah. So ultimately, like, I think before you give your test, your final test in August and September, you should take at least 4 to 5 practice tests. When I say practice tests, that means like you sit for the entire duration of the test. I think it's 6 hours. So try to do the same thing, exact thing. Try to stay, give yourself like that privacy, and make sure you're giving that test just like you would in the actual environment, so that you're prepared for that. You're prepared to sit for 6 hours at a stretch. And you can use like there's different tests available online, but I think like the ETS, which is the official website, the test for that, and then the Manhattan test and balance test, I think they are pretty decent, all of them. Cool. That was all right. Next is TOEFL. So obviously, after you give your GRE, you have to give a TOEFL. TOEFL is basically a test of in English. It just tests your speaking, reading, writing, and listening. I think it's super simple. It takes maybe like a week or two to prepare, honestly, and especially after GRE, it's going to be super easy for you. So the scoring is based on 30 points each for reading, writing, speaking, and listening. And I think most schools require that you get a 90 plus score on that. So it's pretty simple to get that 90 plus. I think I have not heard of anyone like not getting good marks on that. It's very easy to get above 100. So you don't have to worry too much. I think just give the official tests and just prepare a little bit. Make sure you're comfortable with speaking though, because sometimes people are not comfortable with that. And especially in an environment where other people are giving the test near you and they're also speaking, it might be kind of confusing. So yeah, just practice for that a little bit. I would say plan to give this 2 to 3 weeks after the GRE, just because you can rest a week or so after you're given your GRE to, just enjoy some downtime and then get back into TOEFL. Finish it as soon as possible. It doesn't honestly take much to prepare, so a couple of weeks and you'll be good to go. Cool. Now the next thing is undergrad, and this is, I think, a very important part of the application. But this is not a one single thing, right? This is your entire 4 years of mass, like engineering or whatever degree you're doing, right? I think the most important part there is to get decent scores. I'm not talking about getting like the best scores. I didn't have those, and a lot of people don't. So you don't have to be a class topper or anything, but you do have to get like decent scores, and by decent, I mean like average at least or above average would be great. And try not to get any KTs, because once you get that, it kind of reflects badly on your application. If you already have that, then it's okay. I know people who have that and have still gotten into colleges, but it's definitely helpful if you don't have any, right? I think an important part of the undergrad or your bachelor's is your final year project. It's a year-long thing, and we get to decide what we want to do. So I think this is because you don't have any work experience before you apply to a master's program. If you're coming straight out of school, then the final year project is very important, because it's kind of the only thing that you can tell about in your application that you were really passionate about and you did it on your own or with a team. And I think like a decent chunk of your application is about that. So I would recommend at the beginning of your 4th year, when they ask you to choose a final year project, I would ask you to think about what domain you should do it in. Do you want to be, for example, if you're doing computer science, then does it have to be in machine learning or like infosec, algorithms, or low level, machine level stuff or something like that. So kind of understand what you exactly want to do with your master's in. It's okay if you don't have the clear idea right now, but it would be helpful if it's in the same domain, so that you can show in your application that, see, I was already interested in machine learning, and that's why I started doing this project with my teammates, and I found this interesting, and that's why I want to go to the program, right? So I think that helps a lot. So make sure you do that. And then the other thing is internships or freelance work, right? I think I didn't do this. I think that was something I regret. I don't regret actually, but like it would have been good if I had some internship experience when I was in bachelor's, right? Just because your application will stand out more. I think most of the people coming from India, we don't do internships. At least a lot of us don't. We don't show that we are, also working in a professional environment, because that differs a lot from an academic environment. So it shows that you have a genuine interest in learning and that you're willing to put the extra effort. So if you can find an internship during your 3rd year or 2nd year, even if it doesn't pay, it's fine. But I think you should try to get something or any freelance work, so that you can show on your application that it kind of shows that you're self-motivated and you can learn on your own, and that you can definitely adapt to new challenges, right? So I think that would be pretty helpful. Now, let's talk about the statement of purpose and the letter of recommendation. So the statement of purpose is basically a document which is kind of, it's kind of the most important part of the application, in my opinion. It's a chance to sell yourself. So regardless of if you've gotten KTs in your bachelor's, or whatever negative stuff about your application, you can explain it in the SOP. And not just the negative stuff, whatever you've done great, you can explain that too. So it's kind of your chance to tell them why they should select you, instead of everyone else, right? So I think it definitely takes time to write the statement of purpose. It's basically like a 1.5 page, about 1.5 2 pages document, explaining what you've done till now. If you have any work experience, you can talk about that. You talk about your academic projects. You talk about the different subjects you liked in undergrad if you're coming straight out of school, or if you're applying when you're working, then you can talk about what part of your job excites you, and that kind of leeways into like what you want to do your master's in and why you chose this particular school and this particular program. And I think it's really helpful to write this on your own. I know there are people out there that kind of outsource this to other people who take some money and write a statement purpose for you. I don't think that's a good idea. I personally wrote mine on my own. It took me a few weeks, but I think it was really worth it. There's a couple of reasons for that, because one, I think it definitely makes you sound more genuine, right? Because if somebody else is going to write your statement of purpose for you, they're probably doing it for hundreds of other people, and they probably have only 4 to 5 different templates that they use for everyone. So think about when these colleges receive these applications, they can already say that, oh, person A and person B have like similar statement of purposes, so I guess they didn't put in the effort to write it on their own, right? I mean, it's a rare chance, but I think when these people who admit you to colleges, they read thousands of statements of purposes. So I'm pretty sure they can figure out a pattern. They're smart enough to do that. So I think it's really important that you write it yourself. If you can't, or that's fine. It's up to you. But I think it gives you an edge over other people because it makes you sound more genuine. And the other thing is that it also helps you understand what you want to really achieve through your master's, and also makes you think about what you've done till now in those 4 years. I mean, I didn't do much like I said, I wasn't any topper, or I was a pretty average student in my engineering, but it did make me think like, oh, what part of these 8 semesters excited me? Like which subject maybe I showed some interest in. That's how I figured out that, like information security, I think will be my thing. That is, I think, something that I'm passionate about and I find it interesting. So I think it's important that you write it yourself. Now, as I mentioned, like the statement of purpose should talk about your undergrad academics and projects, any internship or freelance experience, and most importantly, it should talk about what you should achieve from your master's degree. By that, I mean, you can talk about why you like this program, why you like the machine learning program at XYZ University, or why you want to work under a particular professor or get into what is that, like a TA under a particular professor. Because especially, I think your statement of purposes, you create one document, but you send it out to like maybe like 7, 8, or 10 different universities, right? But I think you should customize it a little bit according to the university and the program you're applying to. And especially like the last couple of paragraphs, you should change that to speak that, I want to apply at Carnegie Mellon, or I want to apply at Georgia Tech, or USC, whatever, because I read about this article from this professor and I would love to get a TA under him, or I just do a little bit research on Google. It doesn't have to be true. It doesn't have to be like you actually want to do it, but it at least shows that you have looked out and made the effort to go and find about what research is going on at the university. So the top schools, they really value research. They really value people who are doing things on their own, who are self-motivated, who can do challenging things, right? So when you talk about some exciting projects going on at their school, and you say that you show an interest in that, that really stands out. So make sure you do that at the end of your application in the SOP. And then the letter of recommendation is another document. It's like a 1-pager kind of, it's basically exactly what it sounds like, a recommendation letter from either your boss or if you're in engineering or like college, then, whoever is your professor, your department head. And especially for engineering, I know that when you do the final year project, you have one professor assigned to you. So it's very helpful to get a letter of recommendation from them as well, because they have seen you work more closely. So it's kind of helpful that way. I see a question, by the way, here. So keep them coming and I'll address it at the end. And so you need about 2 to 3 different letter of recommendations from two to three people. Try to get each of them to talk about like a different quality of yours. So, for example, one might say that you're really hardworking and you're really passionate about this X, right? And the other one could say that, oh, you're really smart and that you do really well in academics, or you take the extra effort to, do the extracurricular stuff and all that. So just try to get like each of them to talk about different qualities, especially like if you're applying through college. A lot of times, like, your professors are not going to write this, right? You kind of prepare it on your own and just get them to sign. That's not how it's supposed to work, but that's kind of how it works. So it's still up to you to write those 3 letters, so you can technically write them well, so that you understand, you're talking about 3 different things in those letters. Let's move to, so that I think concludes everything I wanted to talk about in terms of your application. I will go over a couple of FAQs that I receive generally through my meetings here at What's Your Chase. Just, some people asking me questions regularly. So I'll go over those, and then we'll jump into the questions from you guys, okay? So the first one is, people ask me all the time is, should I do an MS or an MBA? Now, MS is very different from an MBA, as you know. MS is Masters of Science. It would be more like a techie field that you'd be doing, versus MBA is more like a business-oriented field. Both of them have jobs. I don't think you should think about jobs right now when you're applying. I think there's plenty of jobs here in America, and as long as you are doing well, I'm pretty sure you will get a job. I think this is a question more for you than for me. That's why I generally tell people I'm mentoring that, I think there's something you need to think about, whether you want to be in science or do you see yourself being on the business side of things. Do you actually find something interesting? Do you have that geeky side a little bit, to kind of go through the masters? Because masters is not going to be easy. Trust me, like, those 3 semesters were literally the toughest of my life. I really enjoyed them, but it was super tough too. So when you are here for a master's, if you're just doing it for the heck of it, or you're not genuinely interested, then it's gonna be tough for you. So make sure that you actually make this decision early. One thing to note is that when you do like, when you do, sorry, one second. So saying that when you do a master's of science, you will get probably a technical job. And I have seen a lot of people, they do MBA later in their life as well. So if you think that, you want to start out as a technical person, then that's good. But you can move to the business side of things later on in your life, and you might not even need an MBA. So think about that. I think that is also one part. But again, this is more of a question for you. You need to understand what is something that excites you, and like what is something that, job is supposed to be fun, right? So think about what you are more oriented towards. Now, the next thing I get is, do I need to take classes for GRE? I think it's not necessary, definitely. You can do it on your own. But I would recommend that you take it, especially if you're like me, that if you do something, especially during college, people sometimes are not that self-motivated, or even if they are, they kind of like lose interest later on. So I think it kind of helps you prepare for the exam. It lets you know at least, the fundamentals of everything, and like it really helps you with the test, especially. They tell you exactly how it's gonna play out. And the second thing I think is that the classes help you keep in check. By that I mean that they kind of make sure that you're making progress, you're learning new words, or you're studying your math or English, you're solving problems. And they do a lot of practice tests as well, so I think that also helps. So while it's not necessary, I definitely encourage you to take classes. I think it's definitely helpful. Then last is, what field should I go for in my master's? So like I said, there's a lot of different master's programs. There's information security, computer science, electrical engineering, and within computer science, there's a ton of majors and minors, right? So going back to the first question, MS or MBA, I think the answer kind of is similar for this. I cannot decide for you like what you should go in. I think again, this is a question for you to understand what interests you. Yeah, right. I think it's a very subjective question, depends on person to person. Uh, but I think as a student or even as as someone who's working, it's important that when you're studying or working, you obviously have some idea about some things that interest you more than others. So I think that's already like a hint of what you might want to do your master's in. Um, so I think this question is very subjective. Like I said, it's difficult to understand or just tell you blankly that you should do this or that. But try to figure out when you're studying. Try to explore different projects and opportunities. Going back to what said about internship and freelancing, so you can try web development if you find that interesting. Maybe you might want to do your master's in that. So. Uh, I think that should be our approach, to try out different things and figure out which one interests you, right? Okay. I think that concludes everything I wanted to speak about. Sorry. Let's go into the questions. I already see that there are a few here, so I'm going to start answering those. But in the meanwhile, feel free to start sending more questions that you have, okay? So the first one is from Parth, and he asks, what is my GRE score? So my GRE score was actually 320, which was pretty moderate, nothing out of the park. But I really messed up on the math part of things, which I think is like, maybe you should take it as a pointer that don't be overconfident about your math. So I got a 163, I think, on my math out of 170, and I got a 157 on my English out of 170. English, I think, is pretty good, or like pretty up there with most people. I think if I was aiming to get like a full score on math and I did not, I think I made some silly mistakes. So make sure that you practice math well enough and are careful when you're solving problems. But yeah, it's like I said earlier, like it's not super difficult to get a good score on your GRE. It's very easy to get like a 315 at least. But even then, a lot of people have problems doing that. So I think practice is key. Okay, next question is from Ria. She asks, so letter of recommendations in engineering college are to be taken mostly from teachers, or also should be preferred from internship company also? So that's a very good question, Ria. I think that it's definitely helpful to get one of them at least from your internship company or your boss. I think that is important because it shows that you built a relationship with whoever you worked with, and that they can vouch for you, and that counts for a lot, because your professor is kind of just he's gonna have to give you that letter of recommendation most likely, right? But getting it from someone you've worked with stands for a lot, because a professional environment, like I said, is different from an academic environment. So when you show that you've done really well in a professional environment and somebody is willing to watch for you, then that counts for a lot. So out of the three letter of recommendations, if you have an internship, I would say that, yeah, maybe get at least one from them. If you have multiple internships, then maybe it's up to you to decide. Sometimes what you can do is, like, let's say you have two internships, and then you can get one letter of recommendation from each internship and also get two from your professors. So that way you have four to choose from. And then depending on the program you're applying to, most of them ask for either 2 or 3 letters. So it's up to you which one you want to pick and choose. I think that will help you. We've already answered the GRE score question. So another question from Ria is, like, getting into CMU, what is a major requirement? So this is a tough question. I cannot tell you out of all the requirements that I mentioned, the GRE, TOEFL, undergrad, student letter of recommendation, all of these things I think have a lot of weight. I am not sure exactly what is like a requirement. They don't tell you when they accept you. But personally, I think my statement of purpose was kind of, it did stand out. Especially because, I mean, I think like I said, like when you do it yourself, when you write it yourself and you take your time, you kind of want to make sure that you reiterate over this again and again. You know, you write it, you rewrite it. So I think for me personally, my letter of recommendation did stand out. Like I said, I didn't have great academic score. I had like a pretty average score, no KDs though. So I think that was an important part of my application, but I cannot tell you which school prefers what. You will hear people talk about this a little bit when you go through this process that, oh, you know, this college is very high on like, say, letter of recommendation or like your academic score. While there might be some hint of truth to it, I wouldn't take too much into it. You know, don't worry about it. Just do your thing and like kind of make sure you're checking in all the boxes. Okay, next question is from, the next question is, sorry, I'm getting confused here. Okay, so the next question from Ankit is that my TOEFL score is 90. Will it be a problem? I don't think it will be a problem. But if you have the time and if you don't mind giving it again, maybe it might be useful. Uh, I think a score of 90 is pretty decent. It's like, you know, just about the requirement. Uh, I cannot tell you exactly. I would be wrong if I, you know, tell you that that's not good enough or good enough. I know that some schools take TOEFL as just like a blanket thing of finding out whether you can speak, read, write English. Uh, you know, and they literally just look at whether you've gotten more than 90 or not. But some other schools, they are more like, you know, maybe they read a little bit more into the score. So if you can, maybe give it again, but I don't think it's like a deal breaker for you. If you got a 90, I know some people have around that. So it's not that big a deal. It's up to you to kind of decide. It might work either way. Sorry, I don't have a great answer to that question. My pointer keeps missing out, so I cannot see the questions. Okay, another question from Ankit is, how should I prepare for the GRE verbal section? So again, going over the verbal section, like I said, is really tough. It takes a long time to prepare for that. I think ideally you should start a few months before you're planning to give your GRE. You don't have to solve everything right away, but I would start with at least, you know, doing the words every day, starting learning vocab, starting learning. You should make a target of like, say, you know, I will learn 30 or 50 words every day, not skip a single day, work through it. And then when you're like 1,000 words into it, maybe then you can start solving some questions on the English side of things, right? So it basically has, as you know, like, you know, a passage and maybe some, you have to write an essay and then fill in the blanks kind of things, right? So uh, you yeah, once you know the verbal part, then it makes it easy for you to answer the question. So I think the foundation of learning that verbal part is important. So make sure you do that a few months before, and then jump into English and also start slowly with math. I think math should be like a consistent thing. Don't be overconfident like me. Don't like make that mistake of, you know, that, oh, I'll be doing great in math. Make sure you practice your math. Make sure you give it like a few tests on math as well, and make sure you are, you know, not making those silly mistakes. For the verbal part, after you've done your vocab, you have to continue doing vocab, by the way. Even after you learn 1,000, you should make sure that you know at least the top 1,500, 2,000 words. Like I said, learn it for life, not just for the test. So that will help you do a lot with all the verbal sections. You have to do a lot of like, you have to practice a lot of different books. There is, like I said, Manhattan's I think is really good. It is pretty difficult. I find them really difficult. So that's a good practice book. And then Barron's is also pretty good. You can do those little exercises that they have, and then you can also uh, a little bit before the test, like I said, give full tests, but also give like these individual tests, like you're just doing English or you're just doing a comprehension part of the English of the verbal section, right? So do those two. I think that will help. Okay, so Parth asks, what are the top 3 programs at CMU and what are the relative scores to get in? I'm not sure what scores he's talking about, GRE or like undergrad. So I think the top programs at CMU. So I think computer science is basically the top program at CMU. It's probably like in the top 3 in the world. So that's one. I think we have a electrical engineering course that's also pretty good. I think um, I want to say InfoSec, but InfoSec is not that popular with a lot of people. Like a lot of people don't actually look into InfoSec when they apply. I know that they have a master's information systems, which is more like it's kind of a leeway between business and tech. So that is from the Heinz School of Engineering. I think it's the best MIS program in the country, I think. So that is another top program there. And the relative scores. So again, CMU, I think I've seen some of my peers who were at CMU with me. They were in it with a score of like 315 or 312 or something, right? But they made sure that their other parts of their application stood out. So going back to, I think somebody asked like your TOEFL score of 90, I think it won't be a deal breaker again, because if you sell other parts of your application, it might be okay. So just like for them, I think their GRE scores weren't that great, but they had work experience or they had like external internships and all that. So I think that helps as well. And in terms of the undergrad score, I'm not sure. Like I was a pretty average student, so I think you don't need to be like super great on that to get in, right? Okay. Next is from Ria. She asks, how do we get it verified? How do we get it verified? Our SOPs are like who the ones. Sorry, let me see this. Okay, she basically wants to find out if the statement of purpose is language and the format is proper, and how do you get it verified from someone. So again, there are professionals out there that might be able to do this for you. I would say that you can get it verified from some senior who's already at a master's program, or some relative or anyone like your siblings or someone, elder siblings or something, or who are good at English. I think you can get them verified through them. You can also get them verified through me if you want, or through basically finding mentors on the Watch Your Chase platform, because I think they might be I think all of us would be pretty helpful with that too. We can verify your SOPs. I think you would have to like really think about how you write it, but we can definitely verify like the English and like the formatting is correct, or even suggest some edits of what you can talk about more, or how you can change the tone of something and maybe talk about something else instead. Kind of need just someone who is good at English to kind of verify your statement of purpose. Okay. Parth asks, do universities consider the number of attempts for GRE? I don't think so. I personally don't know the answer to that. I only gave it once, but I think if you give it I think there is a limit on GREs in there. Like you can give it like 3 times or 5 times in a year, something like that. So, I mean, of course, if you're doing it that many times, then maybe you also need to think like, maybe you should need to take a step back. This means that you're not well prepared, right? If you're taking it 3 or 4 times, then that means you're definitely not well prepared. So maybe you should take a step back and prepare well and then give it. Otherwise, I would say I don't think it really matters if you do it like 2 times. It's probably okay. I don't think like anyone would give it like so many times anyway, because it costs a lot of money too. I think couple of times is probably okay. Even 3 times might be okay. I'm not sure what the answer to that is. But yeah, try to give it just once. So prepare well for that one time. Yeah. Okay, so Ankit asks, what are some books for quant? I think there is a book called Nova's GRE Bible. Nova's GRE Bible. I think that is a pretty solid book. It basically has like, I think 24, 30 sections on math, each of them a different chapter, like probability, statistics, this and that. And like each one of them focuses on just that part, and a lot of questions on that, and tons of questions on that. And it has, I think, like sections of easy, medium, and hard, and the hard ones are actually really good. So I think that book is really solid. You should definitely solve that book maybe once or twice. It doesn't take too long to solve it. It's pretty easy, but I think that book was really helpful. And then again, Manhattan's. I think I find Manhattan's like the most difficult book that I solved for the GRE. So that is a good one. But this is all information again from like 5 years ago when I gave my GRE. So maybe there are new books out there that I'm not aware of. So you should definitely do your research online, and find new books or yeah, probably new books that are better. Okay. So okay. I think there's a couple of questions on the other side. Let me just say. So Shreya asks, what would you say about the job scenario in the US currently? Um, yeah, I think that's a good question. That's a really good question. I know a lot of you who apply, they're kind of worried about this, that you won't find a job or something. I honestly don't think you should worry about that. I think it's pretty good, especially if you're doing tech. I think it's I think tech is super booming here, especially in the Bay Area or even on New York or Boston side of things. I think there's a lot of jobs available. So I don't think it's really tough for you to find a job. Uh, it might take you a while after you graduate or while you're graduating in your final semester. It might take you a few months of interviewing, which might be, a little stressful. I can understand that. I went through it too. I think everyone goes through it, but I think there's a really good chance that you would get it. And also another important thing to mention is that when you do your master's, you're required to do an internship during the summer. So that's basically you applying to a lot of companies and getting an internship in whatever domain you want to get in. And you work for this company for like 3 months as an intern, and they make you work on real projects. So most of the times these internships, they get converted into a full-time job. So at the end of the internship or at the start of your next semester or your final semester, you would have an offer from them most likely saying that, oh, you can join us after you graduate. Why do companies do this? Because it's more helpful for them too, right? Because they already vetted you when they interviewed you for the internship, and internship interviews are a little bit more easier than full-time interviews. They're not that complicated or stressful. And then it works in their favor, right? Because they already have someone who knows their tech stack, who knows how things go around at the job. So they would probably prefer someone, who's already working there, even as an intern, as opposed to hiring someone completely new. So if nothing else, I think you most likely will be pretty secure with at least that one job about your internship converting to your full-time role. And of course, after you get your full-time role after a year or two, if you don't like it, you can definitely move around. So it's not a big deal. So I think the job scenario is not that bad, but this is specifically for tech. I think MBA students or like people in other domains, I can't answer too much about that. I know some people had trouble finding like jobs doing civil engineering and stuff. So I think it's better if you talk to someone who has that background and is currently working in that kind of a role. But I can speak for tech and I can tell you that there are ample amount of jobs for everyone, but you kind of need to work for it though. And Priyanka asks, how important is scoring and analytical writing? Also, does it affect if one has scored above 310? So again, I'll answer the second part first. So the 310 score is decent. It's not a great score, but it's pretty decent. I think if other parts of your application are standing out, then you might be okay. A lot of times 310 is okay when you're working because they can understand that you're already doing, work, you have a job, full-time job, then that takes up a lot of time. So it's not easy for you to focus on GRE and stuff. So a lot of times, people who are evaluating these applications, they understand that and they see your application as a whole. So it might be okay with a 310 score if you have solid projects, if you have good letters of recommendation and a statement of purpose. And you can also probably, kind of talk, you could talk about your 310 score on the statement of purpose if you wanted to, but it's up to you. But I think it's a solid score. If I think it's also up to you. Do you really think that you might be able to get like a 320 or 330 in the next attempt? If you think so, then go for it, because obviously it would be better. But if you think you will give the GRE and you might end up with a 315 or a 312, then I don't know if it's worth it spending that much time just to get 2 points more, right? And a lot of times it's very hard to increase your score after you after you get a score, because basically you get mentally tired, doing the same thing again and again. It's just the nature of humans. So it's really hard for us to do something and then completely redo the whole thing again, right? So unless you think that you can make significant changes or like improvements to your score, I don't think it's worth it to give another one. And by significant changes, I mean at least a 5-point improvement on your score, 5 to 7 point improvement, right? Hope that answers your question on that. And then how important is the scoring in analytical writing? So I think it's important. That one is also important. I'm sorry I missed that, I think, earlier for the GRE test, but I think they require mostly a score of 4 out of 6, if I'm not wrong. So analytical writing, again, it's not going to be, they're not so much, you have to kind of put your opinion and views out there on the topic. So again, it's helpful to be up to date with current events, because a lot of them would be about like climate change or like something going on in the world, and the topics would be related to that. So it would be helpful if you already know about these things. So going back to somebody who asked me earlier how you can prepare for the verbal section, I think this is also another important part of the whole thing, that you are up to date with current things. And how you can do that: you can read news, you can read articles, read books. The more aware you are about these things, it will help you with your writing. And then the second part is the vocab, the words that you practice. If you use like good language in your analytical writing or your essay, basically, then that's gonna show well with the people who are reviewing it. So I think that is how you can make your score higher. And then you should obviously have like a good you should obviously have good English and proper punctuation or like sentence forming and all that, which is pretty basic. So do practice writing essays too. I didn't write a whole lot, but I definitely wrote at least 5 to 7 essays before I gave my GRE. I think that would be helpful. Okay. So Ria asked another question about what is the return on investment, like up to what time approximate can we recover? So I assume she's talking about the money that you would spend for the program, I guess. So master's program, they have different fees. State schools have like lower fees, like 30,000 or something. Or if you go to like a private school like CMU or Stanford or MIT, I guess. I hope these are private. I'm not sure, but like they'll probably be expensive, right? They'll be around 60 grand or 50 grand. $60,000, $50,000, which is a lot of money. I understand that. So you can get a loan from India, right? And then hopefully that would cover a lot of it. I think it doesn't take too long after you graduate to pay off all of it. I think it will take you probably like 2 years max, I think, to pay all of it, or maybe 3 years at the very max, but it doesn't take that long, honestly. Yeah, because you get a job and you make a lot of more money in tech, especially. So it's pretty easy to pay off that loan. And I think some people I know that they also, when you do your internship, you earn a significant amount of money as well during those 3 months. So kind of your internship pretty much pays off your third semester. So it will at least give you 15 grand, I think 10 to 15 grand to work with. So that already like pays off one semester kind of. So I think that helps. And then, yeah, I don't think it takes super long to cover all the amount that you spend. And then Parth asks me if I can share my statement of purpose for reference if possible. Unfortunately, Parth, I don't like sharing my statement of purpose just because it's like super personal to me. I can definitely verify yours, and we can have a conversation if you like on the chat or on the WhatsApp Chase platform. You can, all of you guys, you can feel free to schedule meetings. I'm a mentor on there, so you can definitely schedule meetings with me, and I can help you go over your SOP. So unfortunately, I don't like sharing my SOP, but I can definitely kind of evaluate yours and tell you what you can do to make it better. So that answers all the questions. I think we have maybe like couple of more minutes here if anyone wants to ask any more questions. I have time. Okay, so I think that concludes our presentation for today. Thank you everyone for attending. I really appreciate all of you guys coming in here. Oh, wait, there's a question. Okay, so Riaz, yes, if the extra certification course, if they play a role. I'm not sure what you exactly mean by an extra certification. I think I understand what you're trying to say. Um, I think it's not necessary for sure. I did not do any extra certifications to get into CMU for sure. Okay, so she asked like if there's an extra certification in machine learning. That's actually a really good question. Yeah, thanks for that. I don't think it's necessary. Definitely not necessary to get into any school. But again, going back to what I said, how you can make your application stand out. I think this is also one of the ways. What I was talking about earlier, during your undergrad, that you have to kind of show that you're going above and beyond. This is one of the ways that you can do that. And the extra certification doesn't have to be something like you did for uh, like not something necessarily that you need to pay money for. You can go to Coursera or some other websites that teach courses, and you can take a course within 6 to 8 weeks. You get a certification. So I think that is pretty easy to get, and I think that's also another way that shows that you kind of want to uh, you know um, it shows that you're doing more than required and that you're genuinely interested in something. So while I think that it's not necessary, I think it's definitely a bonus because you can talk about it on your statement of purpose or maybe mention it on your resume or something. Cool. And then I have one more question here, which is what type of projects should we mention on your resume, on our resume, and how many? I think the significant ones. So the important part about building a resume is that when you mention projects, mention only ones that you can actually talk about, right? It doesn't matter whether so a lot of projects we do at school or at work are team projects. So it doesn't matter if you did the work or not. I can understand sometimes you do or sometimes you don't, but make sure you're able to speak about that very confidently and actually explain what you did. So I think those are the projects that should be on your resume. Resumes are generally like one pages, or in India we sometimes have two page of resumes, even here actually. So you could have like a little more. I would say like undergrad, I think your final year project should be there, and maybe like two or three other major projects that you worked on. But again, going back, more important is not how many, but the ones that you can definitely speak very confidently about, and what you kind of like have interest in. And she also asked, can we mention our finance-based projects and case study-based projects in our resume? For example, I have a SPJM or course project. I think you can definitely. There's nothing stopping you from building out your own resume. It can be as personalized as you want. If that is something that you show interest in, you can. I think maybe it will pique interest in someone. I'm not sure what you're aiming for here. Like you say you have a finance-based projects, so I assume I don't know exactly what kind of masters you want to get, but it might be helpful. But it may, if you're applying for, say, like a tech job or like a master's of science in, say, computer science, then I don't know how important is it to mention this project specifically, because I mean, it depends, right? Like it depends on whether you're putting this project in place of some other project that might be more relevant to that particular program you're applying to, right? So sometimes you have to tweak this a little bit, depending on the program you're applying to. You might want to put in a different project versus another one. So kind of have to understand that. But I don't think there's any restrictions on whether you can put a finance-based project or not. You can definitely put it, and if you don't get a chance to put it in your, uh, in your resume, maybe you can talk about it in your recipe or something. So she also asks, is there a limit that you should cover your resume? Like, is there a maximum limit basically on the resume? Is it 2 pages or so? So there's no actual limit, but like standards say that, it should be, technically it should be a 1 pager. It's okay if it's a 2 pager. I've seen resumes when I take interviews, which are like 3 pages or 4 pages long. Personally for me, or I think even other people, I think might think that, you're not focusing on condensing this information. You kind of want to just show that you did a lot of work. But a lot of times when resumes are 3 or 4 pages, their formatting is not well. Maybe they could have condensed it down to 2 pages, but they didn't. So I think there's no hard limit as such, but you should try and get there only in 1 or 2 pages max. Don't use more than that, because people also don't like go over your resume very like well over everything. So don't yeah, I think 2 pages is still okay, but probably not more than that, right? And resume should only cover like the very important things of your life. Like you don't have to specifically mention each and every project you worked on, because that's just gonna not show well. And if they ask you questions about it, maybe you might not be able to answer, and that's how you kind of fail interviews sometimes. Another question is from Parth. Any tips for visa interviews? What if we have loans? Should we mention it? I mean, if he asks you how you got the money, then just say the truth, right? You don't want to lie to him. They know that already students take loans, so it's not like they don't know. So there's nothing new on that. And no tips for visa interviews as such. Yeah, just be confident and go there. Answer every question truthfully. Most importantly, don't like try to bend around and lie to them, or like try to be sneaky or anything. Don't do that. Like they're smart enough. Just understand that this person takes 100 or 200 interviews every day, and they've been doing it for years, so they know every trick in the book, and they kind of know everything about every student. You're not like super special. You're not doing something completely different, so they already have gone through cases like yours. So I'd say just be honest. Like just say whatever they ask you. Visa interviews for masters are pretty simple. Generally they ask you what school you're going to, why you're going to the school, what program are you going to, why you applied for the school, something like that. Or they might ask you where you did your bachelor's and stuff. They also might ask you how you got the money and all that. So kind of just try to answer everything honestly. Make sure you have research a little bit online as well. I would suggest. It's been a while since I gave that, but research a little bit, like what kind of questions they ask. But I think for the top 3 or 4 questions, do have some premeditated answers that at least think about it. You don't have to like say it word to word and remember it, but at least think about it so that you're not shocked by the question when they ask you. Sometimes they ask you tough questions. I've seen some people getting grilled in front of me in the line about their masters. So it's helpful that you prepare for it, but don't stress about it. Honestly, like they allow a lot of people for masters, so it's not a big deal. Okay, I'm really glad that you guys asked so many questions. It's really helpful for everyone else as well. I think we're done with our time. Yeah, I think it's 8:30, and I also have to get to work. So I think that's it for today, guys. I can definitely take more questions. I think maybe can provide these guys some sort of like platform to ask me more questions if they have any lingering questions for later. They can feel free to reach out to me. You can definitely reach out to me on the What's Your Chase platform. I'm a mentor there, and if you want to talk about your application and understand things more clearly personally, I would recommend you schedule a meeting so that we can go over these go over your plans, and kind of hopefully I can help you there as well. Otherwise, thank you very much for attending. I really appreciate everyone coming on here. I know it's late at night, so thank you so much for attending, and have a good night. All right, thanks. Bye.